Escrow, what is it and how does it work for the home buying process? Come find out. Basically, escrow, in the most simplest terms, is just the process of buying or selling a house. Escrow handles all of the paperwork and all of the money. So if you're buying a house, selling a house, refinancing your house, that's our job, is to make sure that all the paperwork and all the money is handled properly.
In addition to what you've just said, is that you need a middleman in between the transaction to make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do, right? It's like the point of having you wouldn't just give somebody money, say, cool, do we have a deal? Likely is human nature would take over and they would take off with your money. That's the reason why escrow was developed a long time ago, was for this very reason. So I guess, to kind of kick off of that, is why is escrow important in a real estate transaction, is kind of what I'm driving at.
We're a neutral third party. We basically don't do anything unless everybody agrees together, and then that's our instruction to move forward. We are licensed, we're bonded, we make sure that your security and all your information is utmost importance. Buyers, sellers, everything. Everybody makes the decisions, they negotiate with the agents, they negotiate with each other, and once they come to an agreement, then we take that instruction and move forward and make sure that it's handled the way that it was negotiated to be.
What types of transactions require escrow service? This is another one where I get people who are like, well, I just want to buy the house and pay cash for it. Why do I even need this person involved in the transaction? And it also falls up with like, why do I need title insurance and things of that nature?
You don't know what's going on with the property. You don't know if all the pipes are going to explode as soon as you walk in the house. And you don't know if they had 7 mortgages on their property, right, that they never paid off. You need escrow anytime you're doing anything financial with your house, or anytime you're doing anything to change ownership in any way, right? And that's to protect you, to protect the person that's buying your house, right? So that, and again, to protect you so they don't come back and sue you, is where our title insurance comes in. So escrow is super important in working with title and going through that, making sure that all the taxes are paid, if there's any liens on the property, all of those items are cleared so that you're getting a property that doesn't have liens on it. Or if you have a common name, my maiden name is Jones, Sara Jones. You can't get more simple than that and common. I could buy a property, right, pay cash and move on my way, but there could be a Sara Jones that has all these judgments and liens against her, right, that they're automatically going to attach to my property and that I'm going to now have to deal with. And when you have escrow and you have title working for you, they make sure that those things don't get attached to your property and you're not responsible for somebody else's problems.
What are the documents, or what things should people prepare for when that escrow is opened up? Walk me through what your process is, maybe, of that start along through the transaction, and what is usually normally asked for, what's required to get that from start to finish.
I do like to reach out to our buyers and sellers and our agents and lenders, right away when we open, to introduce myself, because too, there's so many people. We have agents and lenders and transaction coordinators, and there's so many people that are contacting the principals that they do get kind of overwhelmed. And so I do like to reach out to them, call them, send them an email. I give them my personal cell phone number. Hey, if you have any questions, something freaks you out, call me. Typically, after we get the deposit, the earnest money, good faith deposit, then I'm off to the races, right? I'm going to contact the seller, contact the buyer. Again, their paperwork, to fill out their escrow paperwork. Their escrow paperwork, I'm going to need to know for a seller, who's your mortgage company? Do you have a homeowners association? Do you hold title in a trust? I need to see those documents, but I definitely like to reach out to them and ask them for all those things. For a buyer, they work a lot with their lender, getting all those pertinent documents in line. And so we don't need quite as much from a buyer in the beginning as we do from our sellers. But also, a big question that I get with the sellers also is, everybody always asks me about capital gains. I can't ever answer that question for anybody. I purposely make sure to know as little as possible about capital gains, because I wouldn't be able to help myself to not answer their question, right? But the tax withholdings for the franchise tax board, the 593 form, everybody, that blows them away. I would definitely say people should be prepared by talking with their tax accountant when they're going to sell their home, so they know what kind of withholdings through escrow they need to do. because that's probably my number one questions with sellers.
Why do I need these people in my transaction? Like, what exactly are they doing here? How escrow protects both the buyers and the sellers? What are they exactly protecting them from?
Goes back to us being neutral, right? We're not going to side with one person or the other. We basically have everybody's back equally. Our securities and our encryptions that we have protect everybody, protect their personal information. I think that that's really important when you are giving people your social security numbers and your bank account numbers and your tax information. I think that that's really important that we have the high encryptions, and also, we're really highly regulated so that everything is protecting the clients, right? So we also help move everything along. And I think that that helps the buyers and sellers equally. That's how we can help them to make sure that they're staying on track, to make sure that their lender's staying on track, that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I think that that's really integral to the process of escrow, to be honest with you.
The security, cybersecurity, we'll call it these days for you guys, is unreal now versus where it was 10 years ago because of just all of the fraud and, stuff that people try to do. And then I think one of the things that I notice most about escrow for my own personal experience is, we'll get a title report back from the title company and they'll just say, hey, here's the lien. That's really all they can do. They can just say, hey, here's the lien, here's the issue, or here's this loan that showed up. And it's you guys who are like, okay, here's what's our plan of attack. You guys are planning with whether that's the seller or the buyer in how we're going to take care of whatever issue is going to keep us from closing the transaction. And so your wealth of knowledge in all of those situations is so critical because you've seen way more than we've seen just with all of the different types of transactions that you personally do yourself. So I understand that that's where I feel like you guys really shine in protecting the buyer or the seller if any of those come up, and they do.
Liens do pop up, and they do sometimes pop up on day 28 of 30 or something, you're like, here you go, figure this out, So there's definitely some researching and some just, experience that helps us get through that. I mean, I've been doing this for 22 years now, which is a little insane when I say it out loud, but seen quite a few things. And to your point, also with the security encryption, everything is so digital now, right? We sign digitally, we text, we rarely phone calls anymore, but everything's email and text and uploading to websites. Back in the day, right? Everything was by hand on paper. There was no emailing. The most digital we had was a fax machine. So having the security encryptions and all the protection for our systems, for our banking, the multi-step when we send a wire out, having that multi-step process of checks and balances, I think it's all very critical for the escrow process to be efficient and to protect buyers and sellers the best we can.
Yeah, 100%. Just being able to do all of those checks and balances, and the keyword, be efficient, because as you know, time is never on your side in a real estate transaction. You're always just trying to make sure you're getting to the next step constantly and as fast as possible. Loan officers, I want it fast. Real estate agents want it fast. So I commend you on all of the quickness and agility you have to have in every transaction.
Throughout the process, our contracts change. There's amendments to the contract. And one thing that I ask of you is not to detail every single document, but what are some of the more pertinent documents you can find or that you're dealing with through the escrow process?
Well, obviously every escrow process starts with the purchase agreement, right? That's our blueprint to start the escrow and what we're going to do and the timeframes that we're going to do it and what's expected of everybody. Other documents, the title report, another critical piece of information we get from the title company that again talks about the liens, the ownership, the taxes, homeowners association documents. We're in charge of ordering all those and also coordinating with our wonderful lenders like Dan to get them everything that they need so that they can get us loan documents so we can get those signed for closing. I mean, the buyers and sellers each have their own separate set of escrow documents because we need different information from both people, right? We need different information. So they have those. I think those top 5 that I named are probably the most critical ones as far as biggest, most important. The other items we can work with, but those I think are the most important ones for our escrows.
And I mean, the escrow process is really based upon what the agents outline as far as time, right? But typically what you say the timeline is, and just if you could kind of average it out to what you normally see or come across your desk as far as the agent's timeline to get it start from escrow opening to close, what is that?
Most time, I would say 85% of the time, we're looking at 30-day escrow. More recently, 21 days has been very popular, but I think 30 is pretty average. It could be as fast as 7 days. It could be as long as 60 days. I mean, I've had an escrow that lasted like 18 months before, but an average escrow, I would say, is 30 days, 21 to 30 days.
Right. So you don't have a lot of time to, when you need things quickly. And more importantly, you need the reaction by really all parties throughout this escrow process, correct?
Correct. That's why I start the first week trying to obtain the documents from the buyers and the sellers and the homeowners associations, because they can take their sweet time in getting us what we need. A lot of times, especially if people aren't from California, if they're coming from a different state or they previously lived in a different state, this is their first time selling a house in California, they don't understand why we want everything in the first 7 days. They're like, oh no, we have to do all this at the end. We want to sign on the day that we're closing. And I have to explain to them, no, it's kind of flip it over here in California, right? We always do everything a little bit differently. That's why I try to get everything done and all of the pertinent information I need to keep the escrow moving forward within the first week. Grant deed being signed, escrow paperwork, getting the payoff demands, the homeowners association documents. I mean, I've got to get all that stuff going in the first 7 days. Absolutely.
And to your point, those are kind of moving targets, right? Because those can change throughout the transaction. Either the escrow can be extended, the escrow can close earlier, ordering, say, a payoff demand or getting the HOA docs. As far as the time sensitivity there, you can or will have to move up some of those timelines depending upon if the agents want to close early or want to extend the escrow process.
If we're trying to close earlier, or also depending on the timeframes, that the inspection timeframes for homeowners association documents, let's say the contract says 7 days. Sometimes agents want them in 3 days, right? So that's definitely a rush. Or a payoff statement. I usually like to have that within 2 weeks of closing. Well, I make sure I have it at least 2 weeks before we close. But if we get pushed out, then I have to redo that whole process again in 2 more weeks or 3 more weeks so that we have everything, all the numbers are accurate for closing. We definitely have to adjust depending on what everybody decides.
On your end, how do you help the agents really with pre-openings to right at until the day of closing? But how would you say you help agents the most in regards to the escrow process?
Well, yeah, when we have a pre-open, right, or you're going on a listing appointment, we want our sellers to know kind of a pretty good ballpark of when that offer comes in, what their net proceeds are going to look like. Pre-opening is fantastic because then we can get a jump start on that title report. If there's anything funky, any liens or something weird that we have to track down or research, I feel like that's a very helpful step. I do take a lot of pride in being very communicative with my agents throughout the process, giving them constant updates. When I can't give them updates, we developed the software to be able to help us give agents and clients updates throughout the escrow process so everybody knows what's going on. Even when we come to closing, let's be honest, at the end of the day, right, we all want to get paid. So I want to be able to, I try to wire commissions to my agents as much as possible, or my mortgage brokers. And I think that's beneficial. You don't have to wait for us to get a check in FedEx or the weekend or whatever, so that you can get paid more quickly, which is just going to help you turn around and put that back into your business so you can give more benefits to your upcoming clients and their listings and everything else like that.
And one thing I can, to that point, none of my clients have waited, in getting their proceeds or any refunds back. I mean, everything has been done very expeditiously, throughout working with you, which is great. And I feel like you push title and making sure those funds are in and making sure that everyone does actually see proceeds very, very timely. Hey, if we're paying cash, do we need an escrow?
Yes, that's like what we were talking about earlier. You absolutely need an escrow if you're paying cash. You don't know what you're getting into. If you're paying cash and handing a deed, it feels like a back alley Craigslist sale to me. It's not safe. You need title insurance. You need an escrow agent that's going to be there, right? Protecting you, protecting the person that you're buying it from. And then also with something that's really cool about the company that I work for, after closing, we have an E&O policy. So right, if something comes up, like you're saying, if I pay cash and you don't have escrow or whatever, and something unforeseen happens afterwards, we have a policy that covers the buyer and the seller so that nobody has to sue each other. other. Nobody has to be litigated, that everybody's covered and protected. So I think that having escrow is absolutely crucial, even if you're paying cash. And also an escrow company, you don't want to just wire somebody your money, right? An escrow company, we have very safe bank accounts, and escrow accounts are a safe place to keep your money and hold your money until you can make sure everything's done. To me, I think the biggest thing that you can do when you go into an escrow is bring your patience, right? There's a lot of hands in the pot. There's a lot of people coordinating and corralling everybody. It's a lot of information. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of reading and disclosures. And most people don't do this every day. They buy a house or sell a house once or twice in their entire lifetime. I think it's critical to be patient. I think it's critical to have the right team on your side, the right escrow person, the right agent, the right lender, because this is what we specialize in. This is what we do every single day, right? We're here to help you and have your back. And I just think that the right team and a lot of patience, I think that those are critical steps for escrow. So typically buyers and sellers both. Again, this is something that's negotiated in the contract. The buyer and seller typically split the escrow fee. And the escrow fee is based on the sales price. If your house is like $450,000 or 1.5 million, there's more liability with the different price points, and so our escrow fee is based on that. A lot of reasons why people are so terrified to have wires sent to them of their proceeds, right? We definitely, besides having a multi-step verification on the actual process of sending the wire, right? One person inputs it, somebody else initiates it, and somebody else approves it, right? So I guess it's 3 steps process before the money actually leaves. But before I send a wire to anyone, I physically pick up the phone and call them and talk to them. And most clients, because I've talked to them more than once, it's not the first time I'm calling to talk to them. I know it's not some random person. And I verify all the information with them verbally before I send a wire. And if I can't get a hold of them, even if I want to make sure everybody gets paid the day after closing, I'll keep calling. I'm not going to send your money and until we talk. I have to verbally verify all your information. So I feel like that's one step that's super critical in making sure that money stays safe. Earnest money deposit is a good faith deposit that you're putting into escrow. It actually is what constitutes an actual escrow. The amount is negotiated between buyer and seller on the purchase agreement.